We all feel bored sometimes, with nothing to do. Most of us feel the need of stimulation, to have some entertainment. Our modern way of life is more prone to this kind of habituation. In fact, it turns out that we already have so much access to entertainment, like internet, radio, TV, books. But even so, somehow, sometimes, this doesn't give us a great reason to spend our precious time as a prize offering for the winning entertainment. The many creative contents that are out there are competing with each others for our attention. You certainly will agree with me that the best entertainment content is the one in which we can express ourselves immediately, mediated by our thoughts, but in which we don't really know how to materialize these thoughts. So, giving space for a certain randomness to surprise us when it does happen, a concretization of the idea. The medium where this ideal content can be processed into creation could very well be an AI-powered work environment like DALL-E 2. There are others like Midjourney or Google's Imagen. There is a twist here regarding AI content creation. You see, there is much more to it. There are even philosophical questions to ponder because of this. And that is what I want to talk about now. I will start by talking a bit about what I did to start using DALL-E 2 and what you can do if you want to try it for yourself. I will show you some applications of this technology and some tips on how you can take the best out of this image generator. Also, I want to talk about what the implications in art will be and about the concept of what it is to be an artist, what might be the future of art itself and entertainment in general. This will be an exercise to better understand how to interact and integrate the presence of synthetic content that will be increasingly more prevalent in our reality. And finally, what will be the role of psychedelics in the search for significance. So stay with me here till the end if you want to go deeper into this philosophical issue of our modernity. So first of all, to be a user creator of DALL-E 2, keep in mind that there is a waiting list and you might not even be chosen to participate in this phase of development and testing. Right now DALL-E 2 is in beta phase. You can even buy its service, but I think you have to be chosen. Even so, you have to be chosen, you have to wait. I suspect that if you are an artist or are somehow related to content creation, that it will be more likely you will be lucky. What I did was open the company page, and right here at the top of the page we have a link that says waiting list. Just click here, fill in the data that is being asked for, and that's it. And now you wait. It's as simple as that. You just have to fill out a short form and wait and get lucky. I waited about 2 months. Similarly, you can try Midjourney and Google's Imagen. Another way to play with image generation is to learn about disco diffusion, and that's free, although less accurate and takes longer to generate the image. About using DALL-E 2, you have to pay attention to their rules and policy. The rules apply to protect the community from images that can raise concern because of fake news or other harmful content. I had some strikes, maybe about 4 times already, because I used certain words like shooting and punching. Even in non-violent context, this will raise a red flag for them. I immediately received a warning each time. If you don't follow the rules, this will lead to the suspension of the account. So pay special attention not to use certain words, even if it's not ill-intended. In my opinion, I think that this policy is perfectly understandable. Now, I want to show you the potential of these new image generators. The progress made by these companies is astounding, and it is only expected to get better for every future version of this AI. As you may already know, there is a whole science behind prompts. That's called prompt engineering. It's the optimal text formatting to have the best results. I usually, in the first sentence, I put the elements and actions. In the second sentence, I write the rendering style in which I want my creation to be inspired on. This is what I consider to be the most essential input. But more parts can be added, but it's optional. A third sentence I can use is to indicate the perspective or view or camera type. A fourth sentence is to indicate the lighting or the source of light or the time of day. And finally, a fifth sentence indicating which artist I want the image generation to be inspired by. What we want is the artist's illustration style. So let's go on to create some examples here. You can see the potential for different applications. This is a game changer in many ways, namely in the making of 2D assets for video game creation or for making animations. Making graphic assets is very time consuming, but this way it facilitates tremendously the creation of consumer-ready entertainment. For instance, the indie video game community will benefit from this, augmenting even more the output of their niche games that is already so intense and vibrant. AAA games already benefit from algorithms to fill their game universe. No Man's Sky comes in mind, also game engines like Unreal Engine 5, but imagine the next leg up in development of image generators. What if you could generate a complete video game based on text instructions alone? From 3D graphics assets to sound and music. What if you could generate videos instead of static images? An entire blockbuster movie even, just from text prompts. Or imagine advertising to be generated automatically and tailor-made for you based on your browser cookies. Right now, DALL-E 2 only generates static images, although in Diffusion you can actually make simple animations based on transformations and merges of static images, but soon it will have better animation capabilities. Image generators come as handy tools to develop quickly some content. One can create graphic assets to use and animate in other programs, facilitating and increasing production speed. For example, for those who are long-time followers of this channel, must have already seen one of my amateur animations. I'm not a professional digital artist, so each of my animations took me months to complete. But with a tool like this, for a 30-minute animation, I will probably develop it in 1 or 2 weeks. I had fun generating images using descriptions of each of my animation videos as prompts to compare the AI-generated images with the original ones. You can see how easy it is for anyone to be able to create content, passing with high marks in quality, standing toe to toe even with those of the professional illustrators. Thus, it's pertinent to evaluate the implications this has for entertainment and the paradigm shift that will arise. The change of concept of what it means to be an artist, the implication that will have to be considered, and the pretexts that will have to open up are huge. Because of the use of image generators, a whole new controversy is surging over the use of the names of established artists who worked hard and are recognized for their merit. These very names which users of AI tools exploit to create images in the style of these same artists. And on top of that, who created these new digital images had no real work to own the piece of art. One could argue that it's almost like copying an exam from a knowledgeable colleague and pass that discipline without really knowing anything about the subject, and with a little luck, maybe even with greater and better grades. From the perspective of an established visual artist, anyone will admit this to be not fair at all. The use of artificial intelligence in a broader sense, on one hand, and in the creation of content, of art and entertainment on the other hand, will raise the issue of permitting or not permitting complete public access to these technologies. That is, the issue in turning it democratic, the total access of these technologies. What I mean by that is, how can a company with its neural network machine learning capabilities monetize a database that is the internet? I mean, the neural network algorithm will feed on this database, but this database is made up of content coming from all its users. It means all of us who contributed in some way or another with our input. And this is somewhat important because it raises the question, who is the legitimate owner of this global database to have the right to monetize from it? The issue becomes clearer if I say that the database sometimes is more specific, like the total collection of a specific artist, like Salvador DALL-E or Mark Simonetti, are names that can be used to generate new images. You see, what I mean is that the internet, and by extent the database that it truly is it not property of the entire humanity? The property of an entire animal species that is the human being? And not being a property of a company, nor of an individual, nor of a group of individuals, but of all? This is the pertinent question. Similarly, the controversy of using the database from a recognized artist, in this perspective, it too will rise a dispute because of the profit generated by an AI tool. Either the company is cashing in, the company that developed the algorithm, or the user creator that used the algorithm that generated the new content. It seems not ethical to generate personal profit of a database that belongs to one artist, let alone from a database that belongs to everyone. Or is it? Well, I don't know what the solution will be to solve this question, but I know it will be a subject of conflict. Probably profit will win, as it usually does in liberal economics. Maybe a characteristic of democratic societies, whether we like it or not. But naturally, some will advocate that credit must be given to the database artist as well the company, the owner of the AI image generator. Some will just ignore the hassle of giving credit where credit is due. All this introspection we're doing now gives us another important perspective, that is the realization that the internet is a human project. Thus will always be a human internet as a foreseeable endeavor. Any neural network algorithm will feed on human digitalized artifacts. Having said that, it's interesting to verify the biases that the user creator can generate because of the internet database it is feeding on. Recently, there was a statement by a Google employee that a chatbot reached some kind of a consciousness, became sentient. Apparently, because of a conversation that the employee had with the program by asking existential questions. This chatbot responded very deeply in relation to his own existence. For instance, the AI mentioned the fear it has of dying and disappearing. So, has the AI reached consciousness? To have an objective answer, if there is one, we have to consider first that there is the difficult question of what consciousness is. The hard question of consciousness has to be resolved beforehand, so that we can assert who or what has consciousness. Hence, we don't know how to objectively identify this thing we call consciousness. What I think what happened in the case of the Google engineer and the AI was that most likely the algorithm regurgitated human behavior found in the database that is the internet. Textual content from forums about dying, books about death, all from human input. The general behavior of human beings facing death is to be afraid, naturally. Remember, I postulated that the internet is a human internet, and all what the neural network learning machine does is feeding on that. If the internet was created and developed by felines, the chatbot would have feline behavior. It's only natural the anthropomorphic mimicry of artificial intelligence. So the same happens with the generation of images using DALL-E 2. But the relevant question here, relative to the authorship of the created content, be it a conversation with a chatbot or a digital image, is that any created content, is it not in the end human heritage? It is only fitting that the use of AI algorithms to be free, open source, but responsible use is to be advocated. Naturally, as I mentioned already, personal profits will be generated either by the user creator or the company that developed the code, raising again the issue of authorship and the rights over ownership. It will be difficult to circumvent or prohibit the generation of personal wealth. For this reason I ask further, what will be the artist's merit? What will be the place of the artist and art in this new paradigm? My guess is that because entertainment in its several modes and ecosystems, it will be increasingly more and more prevalent in our lives, so much that it might lose some of its attention-grabbing properties. Entertainment will be so prevalent that each piece of art will be trying to win on its ecosystem that's inhabiting very specific battles against each other works of art and entertainment to win over our attention. This is nothing new. It's called promotion or promoting and marketing, but it will intensify immensely because the creative and development process is facilitated. Leaving more time to expose and deliver each work of art because the supply will be much greater than the demand, creative content will lose importance and appreciation. Potentially what can happen is the following. On the one hand, because there are people with lots of money and wealth, and because the condition of the human being as an animal species is to assign value to things, rich people will invest in things which in turn influence the perception of value in others through the allocation of their wealth in pieces of art and entertainment or any creative content in general. So the role of NFTs for works of art may come as no surprise as a way to allocate wealth by rich people in a hypothetical future, as this will be another stamp of property. But on the other hand, the entertainment ecosystems themselves will compete against each other. Therefore, art itself will be delivered through other means, be it complete immersion in a virtual reality simulation, making other ecosystems obsolete. In this new era of entertainment delivery, it's only obvious the remaking of classic tales, only thereafter and soon enough to be again challenged by AI-generated content in a new environment. And this will go on and on. It will be increasingly clear that it's not the creative content itself that will be captivating, but the way it is communicated, what form of delivery is utilized. The artist's role will be not of creating creative content, art, entertainment, or whatever, but in convincing, in trying to blossoming significance and meaning in the perspective of the observer, much like healers and shamans do, to gain insight for a sense of purpose. For the observer, the search of meaning in art is mediated by the artist, but it will be not only art in the traditional concept. The artist will be of a central importance in the search of meaning in all other things in life. So, because, as I mentioned before, entertainment, that is, any form of art in this regard, it will become incrementally more prevalent in our lives. The adaptation of the human being in the world with huge amount of stimuli is only possible when one is captivated by the singular significance of one or a few pieces of entertainment, that is, the attention to one singular thing, being the barrier to everything that doesn't matter, achieving a more peaceful mind. The role of the artist is that of a healer. The artist's role, more so in the future, will be to pull the observer's attention not on his piece of art, that will be soon obsolete anyway, but to convince the observer that he is himself his own creator of significance and meaning. To converge attention at this one thing and not to be distracted for and by all the other stimuli. Art is, after all, not created by the artist alone, with or without the aid of machines. In truth, art is co-created by the observer. I'd like to leave you for reflection a chapter of the book Infinity and Paradox that I think is useful for those who like to deepen this perspective on art and on what it means to be an artist. Even more so in relation to AI content creation and the hypothetical future it might bring us in terms of abundance of entertainment. It's the 9th chapter called Art that you can listen here, narrated by a text-to-speech machine, I know, right? Or here, read by me. To sum it all up and to conclude, we saw how it is possible to create 2D graphic assets to use in animations and video games. We imagined one day being possible to also generate 3D content with the same ease, and as a next step, the creation of the entire game itself with the same ease as an image is created in DALL-E 2. And not just games, but video, even complete movies tailored to the viewer that will be at the same time a user because of using the program and a creator because of executing the AI creative process. Even one day to generate construction projects and innovative products for consumers. Who knows? But the strong point is entertainment. No more wasting too much time in the creative process. Instead, we'll spend time on allocating time in the way the content is delivered and consumed. So this video is intended to be more of a thought experiment. I hope I can convey to you this following realization. The best entertainment content is the one in which we can express our thoughts by immediately realizing them in the form of art, but in which we don't quite know how, giving space for a certain randomness to surprise us. What do I mean by this? Actually, this is what happens in dreams. Yes, our dreams, when we sleep, they are actually the result of a neural network-like process when we are comparing it to using artificial intelligence. But in this specific case of the dreams, it's all a natural phenomenon. I don't know if it's by coincidence or by design, be it human design or divine providence. For this discussion, it doesn't matter so much what the ontological substance is. Let's take a look at this natural process in human sleep. A certain part of our minds has acquired the database throughout the day from the inputs of our senses. Another part of the mind executes the code that provides the creative process, a certain randomness. And the third part of the mind is responsible for attributing quality to qualia, or subjectiveness. This here is a kind of a strange loop, if you think about it. Attributing quality to qualia. It is the observer in its most inner subjective existence, equivalent to DALL-E 2 user creator who starts the creative process with a suggestion, a text prompt. It's like a meta perspective. To summarize, one part is the database, a second part is the execution of the program, and the third part is the subjective essence. What has sleeping anything to do with this, you may ask? Because it is sleep that triggers the execution of the code of the second fraction of the psyche or mind. Using its metal database, it will create, with some degree of randomness, a new content that the subjectivity essence will attribute significance. When you dream, it seems like you're always really entangled in the plot, right? For example, once, as a 10-year-old boy, on one occasion my mother told me not to stay late watching TV. But I watched a horror movie that everyone was talking about at the time. I couldn't see the whole movie because it had parts that were too scary for me. What is certain is that when I fell asleep, the shadows of the room scared me. Of course, that night I ended up having a horrible nightmare. In another occasion, when I was 15, I was so excited to go to a prom in high school that I ended up dreaming about it one night before. It seems to me that even without knowing how or why, we are mimicking a mental information processing scheme, transferring this pattern into the information technology processes for developing AI algorithms. The human mental processing scheme can only be translated into technology processes for developing AI algorithms. The human mental processing scheme can only be translated into technology that includes the human reference. The more we develop artificial intelligence, the more we know our own cognitive processes and other mental and neurological structures, and vice versa. You see, it's all entangled. They are all interdisciplinary fields. That said, some might argue that this means that AI will always have a limit, as its development is limited by our own human limitations. Well, this is where the role of psychedelics come in. AI development won't be limited by human nature because we ourselves don't really know our truest nature as a whole, which I believe we are to find out as we go along. And this might go on potentially forever. Psychedelics will help us to understand the mathematical artifacts that advanced AI will produce. These metaphysical artifacts might even become physically materialized, concretized objects that we will try to reverse engineer to understand them, to find utility for them. Just like the appreciation process of a piece of art, these artifacts are just revelations of what the truest nature of consciousness is, which we humans are just a tiny representation of. Moreover, to attribute significance to these artifacts, this will be the greatest and biggest achievement of human existence. These once metaphysical objects, but then turned multidimensional artifacts, will be a result and emergence of all the agglomerations of concepts, of images and suggestions, of all things real and imagined, just like the images generated in DALL-E 2. In fact, as we do in our dreams, and maybe extrapolating a bit, but maybe as we do in our waking lives, each part of our day-to-day lives was originated by a database of the world, executed by a suggestion with a hint of randomness. Random, from our point of view, almost like a genetic mutation that allows for true variety. We are all just like an artist who produces his art with all his acquired influences. Am I implying that we live in a simulation? Or is this DALL-E 3 already? Not a simulation in the common sense, I must say, but a very special one. It's a strange loop. It's infinite in expression and paradoxical in nature. Be well.